Where's Charles? He was supposed to be here. You're down there? You're too late? Are we ready yet, or? Okay. All right. Would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Barbara, would you please do the roll call?
Charles Fisher.
Here.
Singer.
Here.
Jim Renner.
Here.
Ann Adrian.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Chuck Lewis.
Here.
Al Rodriguez.
Here.
Barbara Taylor, myself. Here.
Okay, may I have a motion for the approval of the June 25th minutes, please?
Make a motion that we approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, we have 3 presentations tonight. 800 Gilbert, the estate of June Wilson, and Gagliotti and McDermott, and Hamby Farm. So without further ado, with 800 Gilbert, the estate of June Wilson. Finally step up.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for having us before you. The property in question, however, is at 800 Galbraith. The existing lot is approximately 37,950 square feet. And if I may, what's before you with the plan is a simple 2-lot subdivision. But I'd also like to give you a little bit of history on the property itself. My name is Dave Zepp, and I'm with Joseph M. Estock Engineering, but I also happen to be the husband of Lynn Zepp, my wife. She's here today. She is one of the daughters of June Wilson. And what ended up happening here was I lost my mother-in-law and lost mom about a year ago or so. But what we're trying to do now is sell the property. And with a little bit of a history, though, I'm going to turn this around and show you. Originally, the property, when Lynn's mother owned it, whatever, there were 2 parcels here, 2 lots. There was a piece here with frontage on Galbraith Avenue, a small lot. It was 100. Well, actually, originally it was 75 by 115, and then they had a piece in the back here with frontage on Randall between Rankin and Tyson. And when my father-in-law and mother-in-law purchased the property back in the 50s, they purchased the two lots separately. And it was like that as two parcels up until 2006. In 2006, whatever, June, alive at the time or whatever, she decided to go through a subdivision and consolidate it into one parcel. And the reason for that at the time was she and her son, Jay, my wife's brother, they were thinking of putting an addition on the house. And the way the addition was designed and everything, it just didn't quite meet setback requirements and stuff. So they eliminated, there was a property line right here. So there was a lot that fronted on Galbraith and a lot that fronted on Randall, and the property line was there, and they eliminated that so that they wouldn't have to abide by certain, building setback lines, when they wanted to put the addition on. What transpired was the addition never happened. They never built it, the expansion wasn't there, and now here we are, we find ourselves today, both my brother-in-law Jay and my mother-in-law June, both of them are no longer with us. They have, June passed on a year ago. So what the family would like to do, I'm going to flip this around now again. What the family would like to do is just do a simple two-lot subdivision and reintroduce that property line across the back here and turn the property into the two parcels the way it was originally. The reason for that, or whatever it is, we would like to be able to sell a house and yet also, maintain the value of the lot back here. Obviously we're going to probably try and sell it. I don't know that we have any plans to develop it, but hopefully we can sell it to someone who does have plans to develop it. So the plan before you, whatever, is simply a two-lot subdivision where we want to reintroduce this property line so that we can sell both properties, or sell both properties, of course, but sell them as two properties rather than just one entire property with a house on it. We feel that there's going to be more value for the family if we do that, whatever, as opposed to just simply selling the property in its entirety with just a house on it and everything. So that's the plan that is in front of you. The review letters that we received, both from staff here at the township and the zoning engineers or whatever, they're commenting whatever about they would like to see some improvements to Randall. As you can see here, whatever, Galbraith does exist physically down almost to the end of the property. Back here in the rear, I'm going to flip this around again just because it's a little bit easier to see. In the rear of the property, Randall only extends down in front of this adjoining property owner right here, the Jones family at 901. That's where the road actually physically ends today. Rankin Avenue, Randall Avenue in this section, and Tyson Avenue down here, they exist as right-of-ways, but they're just paper streets. They have not been improved. Most of the comments from staff and everything with the township are addressing the fact that if this property back here was to be improved, the township wants to see some type of road improvement back there because it's a lot, it has frontage, it has access to public right-of-ways, but the road is not physically there. So most of the comments were addressing the fact that they would like to see improvements here. What we're before you tonight is, we're actually not trying to improve anything. We're not trying to build anything. We would like to sell this house as is and hopefully get a prospective buyer back here that's interested in this property that then would come in and do some type of development. Under the current zoning right now and everything, it's R3. I think by right we can fit 4 single-family lots back here and stuff. There's some other options or whatever as far as, some prospective buyer of this property would have in the way of developing it. However, as far as the family's concerned, is that we're not developers. We just want to sell the property. So our presentation to you, whatever, is just simply flip it back around again. Just simply reintroduce this property line back here, create one lot of about 11,500 square feet on Galbraith, and then the larger parcel in the back, lot number 2, would be 26,450 feet with frontage on Randall, but there's no improvements. So it was more or less the case of what we're presenting to you, just, a simple subdivision to create that property line so we can sell those lots. As far as the improvements, the requirement of building Randall, whatever, at this point or whatever, we're asking that those type of improvements be waived until such time when whoever the property owner may be comes back before the township again to try and develop the property in the back. So, are there any questions?
Well, I was just going to ask that as a question. I have one question. On the one plan, it lists an easement. You're just going to bring the property line straight across now, correct?
Yes.
I like that much better because I went over there and looked at it and the driveway's like this and then the slope is like this next to it. And I'm thinking there's not going to be a driveway there unless you're going to go sliding down into the creek.
I was going to say, the plan before you does show that easement on here, but that's something that we can certainly, if the township, does not want that, if they require that access to the lot number 2 that we're creating, come off of Randall, we can certainly note it, put a note on the plan. The easement could be removed, we could easily remove that easement.
There's a big boulder in there too, right in the middle of that easement somewhere. I could see it from the street. I went down, I always go look at everything. And I think what you're describing, bringing the property line across, is it's a much better aesthetically and it's much easier.
Yes, actually, Mr. Wilson, back when he was alive or whatever, he used to physically access around the property and come back. I mean, he was a contractor, and I'm already going to apologize to my wife if I misspeak or she'll come over here and kick me, whatever. But Bernie Wilson was a builder in the township, and actually he was even a township commissioner for a while, whatever. But when he was alive and running his business and everything, he would physically drive around the side here, and if you've been out to the property, you kind of see how he did it. And he would drive in the back, and then all of his construction equipment, his supplies and everything, he kind of like kept it in the back there and everything. So we had originally thought that if we provided an easement, that we might be able to provide access to lot 2 from Galbraith, but it's apparent from the comments of staff and everything that that's something that the township does not want to see. If lot 2 is created, they're going to want to see some improvements here, okay? And, but at this point, with no proposed construction, no proposed improvements, we're just looking to create a lot so we can sell the property with the house on it and have a lot in the back here that adds value, to the family as far as the estate that they have. If I may, I would like to open up some discussion right now and actually ask you and ask Mr. Rodriguez,
Well, I was just going to do that.
what I say, if someone comes in to do lot number 2, whatever, if they maximize what they can do there, put 4 single-family homes in, or under the R3 zoning, you're allowed to do twins if that's a place. There's a sketch I have where you can actually get 5 units in there. I am sure, whatever, that the township will want to see Randall improved all the way down here to this end. But my question there is, will they ask for a full-blown cul-de-sac at the end here? If there's development here, whether it's 4 single-family homes or 5 units, 4 twins and a single, and Randall is improved all the way, will the township be looking for a full-blown, cul-de-sac at the end there?
That's not really this plan. I mean, that's not, I don't know that you want to muddy the water.
That's at this point, that's not necessary. I was just, Alex, do you have any questions or comments?
They articulated that address, I believe, and this for the solicitor to weigh in on, but 2 paper shoots have been around for years. I believe the municipality, when paper streets are initially created, they have a lifespan of years.
Correct.
And if the township or municipality does not improve a paper street after that time.
Reverts back to the adjoining homeowner, so
Right,
Rankin actually does not exist. So,
Right, I don't know that-
and I think that there has been a formal vacation of that paper street, so.
Or part of one anyway,
Part of, right, that's.
where the easement is,
Correct.
if I'm not mistaken.
I was gonna say, what I am aware of, there has been a vacation of this section of Tyson. It was done back in 2004.
Yeah, well, Rankin also.
So, Tyson officially has been vacated back to here. That's my knowledge, this section of Tyson still exists as paper, and the same with Rankin.
Yeah.
Well, it may be on the books, but if there's been nothing done for 21 years,
Yeah,
it's gonna revert back to that land anyway. So again, candidly, I don't know that you wanna muddy the waters with that. As for, if the time comes when the second lot, for lack of a better word, the larger lot, if it would be developed, then you can address all those issues related to whether or not there needs to be additional improvements on the roadways for access, that type of.
Does he have to do that before he sells it, or is that up to the person that
That would
buys
be
it?
up to the person that buys it. He would sell it without contingencies, presumably, and then, unless they sell it with a contingency that it can be developed into a certain plan. But that would have to come before you as a land development application.
Mr.
So
Renner?
that brings the question to my mind about the proposed access easement being necessary, because we cannot create a landlocked piece of property.
But
Well, I think you can address that by leaving the easement as it is.
Right.
And then if such time as the development is made, then they would have to provide access to that land, presumably by improving either Randall or extending Rankin through a dedication there so that it is not landlocked. I think if you did decide to approve this, you could leave the easement as it is for the access to there. And then when the second development comes in, then you can reach an agreement to eliminate that.
But to revert, but if we don't know if they have the municipality has the rights to still keep it as a paper street, what happens if?
Well, that's what I'm saying, they would have to rededicate it back it would have to be put back on the plan as part of any land development for the second lot. They would have to dedicate that particular area back to the township. I don't know, I don't know definitive. Well, that's why you need to leave the easement where it is for now until that gets addressed.
I thought this was going to be easy.
Well, it is in some ways, but there is a little bit of a complication. So.
They can't just develop the front street and go in that way. They have to have access through the back.
Well, they could, but right now, I think the concern that Alex was raising was that if you agreed to this without the easement still being in place, and Jim had said you may create a property in its current condition that is landlocked. Right. And I don't know that you want to do that, so that's why I'm suggesting maybe you just leave that easement in place for now until you decide what you're going to do with that particular property.
Mike, can I ask you a question? Along the same lines, if we put a proviso or a condition that the easement may remain in place until such time as the second lot is sold, which would then trigger what you're talking about.
Correct. You could do that. Yep.
we'd be more than willing to put whatever type of language you want on the plan stipulating what must happen, whatever, and that, at the time of development of lot 2, this goes away.
Mhm.
But
That could be part of any conditional recommendation, I would think that.
Well, I don't see how the easement satisfies a landlocked issue. It's still landlocked,
Well, you have flag lots, right?
but it's not being presented as a flag lot.
I understand that, but the question is whether you have an easement. And if you have an easement, you may have created a flag lot, at least temporarily. But what they're saying is that that second parcel is developed, otherwise they could never sell it and develop it, right? Unless they had that easement.
Like,
The easement would be,
Front street.
what I'm saying, the easement is right now saying it's going to be 14 lot 2, but you're giving that future person the ability to kind of subdivide it to 45 lots with.
Well, that would be part of their land development. When they come in and present their plan, the township would then say, no, you need to develop either Randall or Rankin or something to give them access to it.
Right.
We're not going to approve this unless you have that improvement. I think that's the easiest way to handle it. I think.
That seems like the most practical way to
Well,
get it.
okay, maybe easy is the wrong word, but practical way.
Because I
Yes.
believe the easement would be enough to serve a single-family home, but certainly not multiple homes.
Right, and then if you have multiple homes,
Then
you have other conditions and it's a whole land development. That's correct.
But the easement goes, the driveway goes up like this, and then it goes down like this.
Right.
And there's, like I said, there's a big chunk of rock in here. Now, how are you going to use that for an easement unless you cut it or fill it? You're not supposed to do that on the steep slope.
It doesn't have to be the easiest access easement, or perhaps that, people consider kind of an easement in their mind as, paved roadway. It doesn't always exist that way.
having been out there and your familiarity with the property and the issue that you just addressed there, or whatever, if the easement still exists and it's providing access and then physically they get access to, there would be some like grading that would have to take place. But we're not envisioning that, we're not even going there with that, because the whole idea is to sell this to someone who will develop it, and then you'll get your road improvements up here on Randall probably. Randall or Rankin, yeah.
Randall would be the most.
I have a silly question. If one person buys it, they want to put a house on it, why can't they just access it with a driveway from the corner?
They wanted to put a single house on it.
Right. What, then they wouldn't have to develop the road at all. But that, I don't think that's going to
I'm glad you
happen.
said that, because that is music to my ears, because what I was envisioning, whatever, even if somebody buys this and wanted to put a single family home in here, I felt that the township would still ask that you put in at least a section of Randall.
This is not binding on what the board is going to do.
Right. I was just asking a question.
She's asking a question,
Yeah.
which
Is that possible?
It's possible, unlikely, but possible.
I don't know what they would decide, but it is a requirement that they would need a waiver.
Yes.
Yeah,
From
yes.
one section. But the zoning officer is saying that the easement not be in compliance with section 1761. So his decision was saying that you can't use it.
Is that the steep slope ordinance?
Because the Charlie Valley responded to the zoning review, and that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Provide access even compliance with section 600.
Well, Mr. Rodriguez did say that's exactly the way Mr. Romali looked at this. He said that this particular easement as shown on the plan does not meet all of the conditions of a flag lot. We're operating under
But
the
you were
fact
never
that
presenting a plan, because you had that one line in the back.
we're operating under the fact that lot 2 that we're creating here or whatever is not a flag lot. It has frontage on a road. The road just doesn't exist yet. It would have to be built.
I don't know exactly what he's saying, because you were never presenting a flag lot for subdivision. You were presenting a plan lot, lot 2 with an access easement. And I understand he's saying that the 25.
it's terminology here that we're going over with this. So,
Well, all I'm saying is that it just seems as if you're trying to now put the access easement, go counter from what the zoning.
Well, that's what I said. Why not just access from the front street? And that would be, it would be in the zone, you know, it would be compliant and everything else instead of going like that, like this down and up the hill. And
but if I,
it's off of Galbraith down at, what is it, Tyson?
it's down on Tyson here. But if I may, and I just want to ask this question and get clarification. How can a lot be considered landlocked when it has frontage on 3 Baker Street?
That was another
The street
question
is not
I
existing.
had. Probably because they don't have existence yet.
Well, I thought we said township has, no longer has rights to the unopened streets after 21 years. That reverts to the adjacent property owners.
They don't have automatic vested rights. They could still serve rights, but if the landowners objected, the landowners would have primary right.
So in my mind, I think that the theoretical fear would be that they're going to have a next act trying to come in and by hardship because you could even create the hardship.
Well, I don't know that we created the hardship. Remember that this was 2 separate lots in 2000 up to 2006.
Yeah, prior to 2006 and the reverse subdivision, which eliminated this property line, created that lot in its entirety. This situation here just was created in 2006 at the request of, June Wilson.
Was that a straight lot
No
line
good
that went
deed goes
across?
unpunished. Yes.
Was that a straight lot line that went, did it go straight across or did it come down the easement?
This property line that went straight across here,
Yeah, it did go straight across?
prior to 2006, yes.
How far is Randall open?
Right to
Randall
the
is
edge.
physically open to within about 90 feet of the corner of June Wilson's property. However, the section of Randall that's open to within 90 feet is only 16 feet wide, and it's 16 feet wide for another 90 feet going back up towards Johnson.
And then it widens up
And then
again.
it widens out. And I know you're saying, don't open up a can of worms here, but there's no way to avoid this. Whatever, both Galbraith and Randall, from Johnson all the way down to the end. Galbraith ends here, Randall physically ends there. Neither street comes close to meeting what the township's specifications are for width,
Well, the issue,
curb, sidewalk.
the issue is not with Randall. Randall was open and, at least it may not be completed all the way through, but the township doesn't lose the vested rights in Randall. Rankin is a different story. Rankin was already vacated by, as I understand it, by the township to begin with. So I'm not sure that it does create a land, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure that it does create a landlocked because Randall is open and notorious still as a street. So I'm not sure, Alex, that 21 years of non-completion applies in this situation because at least a significant portion of Randall is still there. Now, Rankin, it definitely applies to, but I'm not sure that it applies to Randall now that I'm thinking it through, so.
Okay.
I just out loud here also, and I'm agreeing without being an attorney, but I'm agreeing, and probably the same thing applies to this section of Tyson back here.
It
also.
could, I'm not that familiar with
Yeah,
Tyson,
you
but
say,
yeah.
this section of Tyson along Mrs. Wilson's property on Galbraith, that definitely has been vacated. That was vacated in 2004
Right.
officially. This section, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure, and I'll defer to your knowledge on Rankin over here too.
Rankin is, as I understand it, is speaking with the township manager, was vacated, so Rankin is not the issue, but if Randall is open in and around that area, then it doesn't become an issue, I don't think.
Randall physically exists within
Yes.
90 feet of Mrs. Wilson's property corner, or whatever. And then, of course, obviously, it doesn't exist all through here. But,
Well, it does on paper.
It does on paper.
And if it
And-
ties into that part of Randall that is already, you know, a street and an active street,
Yeah.
I think the argument can be made that it has not been abandoned by the township.
yeah. And I understand Mr. Rinaldi's point in looking at that, but I'm just questioning, you know, lot 2 is not landlocked if Randall, you know, is
Right.
recognized.
Well, right, he's looking at it from the fact that there's no street
No,
visible
physical.
there.
So just to make myself clear, so you do believe that this is considered a public unopened street?
Randall,
Randall.
yes. I think, I mean, I'll have to research that before it becomes before the Board of Commissioners, but I think that the fact that it's open up to that point, even if it terminus there, I think the argument can be made, and you may want to make that as part of the conditional approval for this, if you decide to do that, that the owner of the lot recognizes that the township still has its rights to this street.
If you feel that it's a public unopened street, that the municipality still has rights to allow them to make public improvements, and I guess the only issue is that they would need some waivers from the SALDO portion.
Potentially. Potentially.
Well, I mean, the ordinance does require that.
We're not doing this, we're not
No,
doing
I know,
that
I
part
know.
of it. It's not a subdivision development plan right now.
That's for the next guy.
That's the next guy. This is a simple, a simple,
So this plan, if there's a subdivision, and all the owners aware that these are the conditions
Yeah.
anticipated.
I would think so.
So when you buy it, you notice the answer to your.
And
I think so.
And it's like Mr. Rodriguez's point there is that that's a wonderful suggestion, because that's really what the family's looking for. Like, we can put all types of stipulations on here, request waivers, but demand that the improvements be done at some point, you know.
Prior to any further development.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. You can dial 571-748-4021 and punch in the pin 776-731-874. And when you do, to unmute yourself, you push the pound and the 6. So if we have any public comments, we'll wait a second. And do you see anything on the? Okay. And if not, we don't get any, we can, I guess, put it up for a vote. Unless anybody else has any other questions. Mr. Fisher.
I'm running through my mind what this note needs to look like I think that's imperative. As long as we can agree with the conditions would be with respect to the easement, with respect to the recognition of Randall being a street in existence, not a paper street. It's yes.
Mr. Trader?
So I think that because you have extended the proposed lot line that separates the two, and you established 2 separate lots, my only question was about the proposed access easement. So I would think that you could address that. But I give it a thought.
Mr. Renner?
I have a question for our solicitor.
Nope. Good thing I came.
It's been as around.
I feel like we have an obligation to protect a buyer here, and could there be a note on the plan that says, prior to sale, access to this property must have been agreed to with the township engineer or something along that line?
Well, I think you're asking for something that technically is speculative because we don't know. I mean, if a person came in and just put a single home on that lot, they probably have access to it already. But any further development, in other words, if they were going to put multiple units on that property, that would have to go through a full subdivision and land development application, and at that time, the township would require finishing Randall.
Mike, how would you have one, the developer was going to do one, and then another one, and then another one? How do you prevent that? Because that's not land development, it's only one.
Well, they would have to, they couldn't do that, they would have to subdivide.
It'd have to come in and subsidize the lot.
Which would be a land development, they would have to do that. And any approval of that would be, you gotta finish off Randall.
But if they went through that process, they would be just saying, just like the first guy, I'm just building one corner lot. So I'm asking for a
The
waiver.
answer might be,
Second
then
guy
you're not
would say
gonna
the
get
same
your,
thing, I'm just gonna build this.
then you're
lot.
not gonna get your approval until, until that's all done, simple as that.
So then, my answer is yes.
The lady in the audience has a question.
My only question is, if someone could buy that lot and not even develop it, true? And therefore, would we have to put on the plan that they have to develop it? Because somebody could just buy it for future selling, but not have any intent of developing it. I don't know if that's fair to them, make them do improvements.
I don't think that that's what they're saying. Nobody said that upon a sale it can be
Well,
done.
he was saying put it on the
I
plan.
think that's what he said, but I think we
We
satisfied
agreed to
saying
not put that on there.
that, not necessarily to put that on there because any development that would come in for that property would be required to finish Randall, not necessarily upon the sale, but
Right,
upon any development or improvement upon that lot.
right, okay.
I think that's what your concern was, Jim, if I'm not
And
correct.
my concern was satisfied.
I vote yes.
Uh,
Mr. Lewis?
I mean, my only concern is, I don't know if it's that big of a deal, but like a fire or something like that breaks out on the lot. I don't see any access for anybody getting back there for anything.
That's one thing I forgot to look for. Where's the fire hydrant? I think there is one back there.
But other than that, I mean, since this was already two properties previously and we're just kind of going into the Wayback Machine, 14 years, I'd say yes.
Okay, that's everybody. And I guess we pass.
Are we, is this a preliminary or final? What was the request?
It is,
Final, preliminary final,
yeah.
preliminary final.
That'll go before the board and I'll advise them what we discussed and what your concerns were, so that before they vote on that, then we can deal with it.
Well, they would have to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ready, thank you.
you're welcome.
It's just a recommendation, it's not approval. The board of commissioners have to
To
approve.
give the approval, we do the recommendation.
I understand, we went up here before, like, getting their approval would be really hard if you guys didn't,
It's been known to happen.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Galbraith.
Well, that was-
It was more complicated than I thought. Definitely thought it was going to be also. Okay, our next presentation, thank you very much for coming, by the way. Our next presentation will be Gagliotti and McDermott. It's a zoning change amendment for Where is it?
Definitely.
For 510, 512, 514, and 516 Bethel Avenue. So you guys, you're up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Would you please tell everybody who you represent and who you are, please?
Absolutely. My name is Daniel Rowley. I'm the attorney for McDermott Construction Company Incorporated and Anthony Gagliotti in the subject petition to rezone their properties from the R2 medium density residential district to the C2 highway commercial district. I brought a PowerPoint here tonight. Barbara, if you could change it to the second slide. This slide shows an aerial of the properties in the surrounding area. The black outlined area shows the subject properties. If you go to the next slide. This slide shows a zoomed in aerial of the properties in the surrounding area. McDermott Construction Company is the owner of the property known as 516 Bethel Avenue. This is the westernmost part of the black outlined area. It includes the former single-family home at the top right at that point along Bethel Avenue and goes along that driveway to the rear of the property and includes the enclosed area at the rear of the property. Anthony Gagliotti is the owner of the properties known as 510 Bethel Avenue and 514 Bethel Avenue. These two properties are actually made up of 3 folio numbers as well. There is another property involved in this application too. That is the property known as 512 Bethel Avenue, which is owned by Joseph F. McClung. I'm sorry, Barbara, could you go back to that last one? So Mr. McClung's property is a small parcel right along Bethel Avenue that has the single-family home and the garage behind it. I do not represent Mr. McClung, but Mr. McClung has consented to the filing of this petition. We included a consent form within our application as an exhibit, and we have been updating Mr. McClung of the status of this petition as it moves through the township process. Now, Barbara, if you could move to the next one. This slide shows the current zoning in the area around the properties. The subject properties are outlined in black. You can also see underneath this zoning layer the parcel lines for the property that I described. It's a little hard to see, but it is under there. Again, Mr. McDermott owns the westernmost parcel. Mr. McClung owns the small portion along Bethel in the center, and Mr. Gagliotti owns the remaining parcels. The properties are all currently located in the R2 district, but collectively the properties are surrounded on 3 sides by commercial properties located in the C2 district. If you could go back to the second slide, actually, the zoomed out aerial. One more back, sorry. Yeah, so the properties collectively share a property line with the Red Zone Sports Bar and Grill to screen right of the properties. And also to the rear of the properties, the Hideout Cigar Shop and Lounge / car wash. Additionally, there are many commercial uses in the immediate area of the properties that are either operating currently or in the recent past, such as an insurance agency, a tire shop, an automotive repair shop, a gas station, and a custom machine parts manufacturer. The properties, as you can see in this photo, are also located in close proximity to Route 322. Besides Mr. McClung's property, the subject properties are also currently being utilized for a commercial purpose. The McDermott property is currently being utilized by McDermott Construction Company in connection with their construction and stucco remediation services. The Gagliotti properties are currently utilized by AR Gagliotti Construction in connection with their construction and landscaping services.
Well, counsel, let's be candid about that. They are being utilized, but there have been citations that were issued. Hence, that's why we're here.
Correct. Correct. There was a zoning citation that was utilized, and which brings us here tonight. The McClung property in the center is utilized as a single-family residential property, but again, it is surrounded by commercial uses. The proposed rezoning of the properties is good planning and consistent with the Aston, Lower Chichester, and Upper Chichester multi-municipal comprehensive plan, which recommended that the properties be zoned in the C2 district. On slide 5, yes, that's the slide. You can see the comprehensive plan's existing land use map prepared in 2005. It shows that the properties at the time were being utilized as single family detached residences. But even in 2005, it was anticipated by the township that these properties would be rezoned to the C2 district. If we turn to the next slide, this shows the future land use map provided in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan actually shows these properties as being recommended to be rezoned to the highway commercial district. So on the left-hand side, that's the entire future land use map that's found in the comprehensive plan. And on the right, I outlined in black, again, the properties, and they're highlighted red to show the highway commercial district. The comprehensive plan was made in 2005, which is a few years back at this point. So I just want to spend a minute to remind the commission of the meaning of this future land use map. The future land use map is a fundamental, and this language generally comes straight from the comprehensive plan. The future land use map is the fundamental component of the comprehensive plan and is intended to provide a general framework for guiding the township's decisions regarding land use and development. These recommended future uses are based on studies done by the township regarding such factors as adjacent land use, zoning, topography, and access. A zoning map that is based on the township future land use map is good and sound planning. Our petition to rezone these properties to the C2 district is consistent with this Upper Chichester Township future land use map. Also of note, yesterday we received the staff review of our application from the Delaware County Planning Commission. The County Planning Commission staff recommended approval of the rezoning of these properties to the C2 district. And then moving to the last slide in my PowerPoint, I also wanted to highlight that if these properties were to be rezoned to the C2 district, there would be greater area and bulk requirements in place to create a larger buffer with the residential district. If the property were to be redeveloped somewhere down the line, there are no plans to do so. But if that were the case, the setback requirements would increase. Specifically, the side yard setback next to a residential district would increase to 50 feet, which is pretty significant from the current requirement of 15 feet. Also, it's worth noting that commercial properties tend to have a higher value than residential properties, so this would potentially result in a higher tax revenue for the township without the impact on any schooling, because these would obviously be commercial and not residential. That is the end of my PowerPoint and presentation. So with that, I'll turn it to the commission to ask any questions you may have. Mr. Gagliotti and Mr. McDermott are here as well, and if we can answer your questions as best we can.
My first question before I ask Alex is, Alex, weren't you here before? Wasn't? Okay. Alex, you have any questions?
I do not have any questions for this project.
Does anyone on the commission have any? Mr. Renner?
Yes. Barbara, can you back up 2 slides, please? I have to back up another one, I guess. And another. Okay. So the subject property that's outlined here is
Yes.
The main one that we're talking about. It's being used in a commercial manner, but it's done residential at the present time.
Correct.
Okay. Now we talk about our comprehensive plan, saying that we believe that should be commercial in the future use. But we also believe that being commercial, it should comply with our rules such as proper buffer between it and the residential areas. So my question is, what are you gonna do for us to bring yourself at least partially in compliance with buffering yourself from the residential areas? What improvements have you planned in this presentation?
So our application is not, we're not proposing any improvements as part of our application, but we have discussed putting a fence along that residential district, if that would help alleviate some of those concerns.
Well, I'm thinking that we'd like to see at least a 6-foot shadow box PVC fence and some evergreens to improve the
Visibility.
livability for the residential neighbors.
We can work with staff to come up with a proposal.
And how many feet of buffer do you think you could afford to do that in?
Again, we haven't analyzed this in depth. This is a petition to change the legal designation of the zoning. So I'm not sure what the square footage would allow, what the property boundary would allow there. So, I mean, that would have to be examined and looked at, and we would have to, have that discussion with township staff.
They would have, if it's changed to the zone, they have to conform to that zone, including the buffering. It's not like they get grandfathered in, because it's their petition to change it to the zoning. So otherwise, they're going to get issued citations for failure to comply with the new zoning. That's what the
Okay.
issue is.
So then we could make it conditional that our expectation is that you do provide the.
That they comply with the new zoning requirements. Yes.
They would have to.
They would have to, yes.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, we'll again open up for public comment. I'll read you the number off again. The number for the commission is 571-748-4021. The PIN number that you punch in is 776-731-7841. And you push #6 to unmute. Do we have any public comment at all? Okay, if there is no public comment, I guess, let's see. Mr. Pierce, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, I guess we will put it up for a vote to change the zoning. Mr. Fisher?
I think it's fine, yes.
Mr. Trader?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Myself, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Lewis already did it. Okay, we pass 5-0, so we're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, ROWLEY.
Everybody okay? And our last presentation is for the Hanby Farm. It's a sketch plan for a warehouse and moving the historical farmhouse. And please state your name and who you are for the stenographer.
I will do that. Good evening, my name is Chuck Dobson. Inland Design, office located in Westchester, PA. And I'm here on behalf of Mr. Steve Conrad, who's in the audience. And to discuss the sketch plan that was presented or submitted to the township for the property located at 4800 Chichester Avenue. So the property is 12.4 acres. It is located in the IC district, and warehouse trucking distribution is an allowable use within that district. We have a note from the zoning officer that opined in that matter as well. The property was previously approved, I think it was about 2 years ago, for a project known as Long Irons, which was generally a golf recreation training kind of facility. And Mr. Conrad had gotten the approval for those plans, but changing market conditions have pretty much made the viability of that project a non-starter. So he's forced to look to other avenues to develop the property in a manner that makes economic sense for him. He has been working with a broker, Ryan Guitar, who's also in the audience, so he can, any questions you may have about some of the ideas they're kicking around for what ultimately is going to happen here. But in general, we have a warehouse. The sketch depicts the warehouse is shown on the plan as 105,000 square feet. Dimensions are 500 feet long and 210 feet wide. We have approximately 150 parking spaces shown on the front and side of the building, which is far in excess of what you require under the parking standards. The existing dwelling on the property is shown to the right of the proposed warehouse as being relocated from its current position. Again, this is a concept sketch. A lot of details need to be worked out, but Mr. Conrad thought it was important to come to you folks and have a discussion, get some ideas, thoughts about which direction he's going to head. So we have the property driveway would take access directly opposite from Chelsea Parkway, which it's not identified in the plan because we wanted to show the entire property, but it's located directly opposite where the proposed driveway is. Circulation around the entire building. At the rear of the building is an area large enough for trucks to load, unload, turn around, do whatever they have to do. The building itself, right now, the idea is it's going to be about 38 feet or so. I think the zoning allows up to 50 feet, so that would comply. The type of construction is looking like it's going to be a tilt-up construction, which basically means that you put the perimeter footings in and you erect a series of concrete panels. You effectively lay them down, you tilt them up into place, and then you brace them in temporarily until the roof system goes on. So really what you're left with is a very large box, which is suitable for that kind of use. The existing conditions, and I know you're probably all pretty familiar with the property, on the northern corner up here, it's the highest, and it drops all the way down to its frontage along 322. There is grading, which again is conceptual. It's shown. Right now, the idea would be since we're going to be taking the access from one of the more lower parts of the property, the access area, the access drive shown around to the north of the building or on the left side of the sketch is actually going to be dropped from the property line by about 20 feet. So it's going to be substantially lower than the adjoining properties. Obviously, should this plan move into land development, we would obviously have to follow all the relative buffering and screening regulations that Upper Chichester has for this type of use. I believe that the adjoining use here is residential, which requires actually 75-foot building setback, which we do show on the plan. It's fairly straightforward. I know Mr. Conrad, he knows that the previous plan was met with a lot of nods, basically a lot of fanfare. He thought it was a good plan. And he's somewhat disappointed that he's not able to fulfill that. But things being what they are today with current market conditions, he has to do something. So, in a nutshell, that's what it is. If you have any questions of me, I'll do my best to answer it. Obviously, Mr. Conrad is in the audience. He can answer questions about things that I may not be aware of. And Mr. Guitar is back there, so if you have any questions about the type of use, tenants, et cetera, he can give you whatever knowledge he has in that regard.
I have a question first, and then I'm going to ask Alex. The last time that this was presented, we had property owners here that were concerned about properties in the back, the runoff from the steep slopes, and we had discussed a kind of a swale or something to run the water off of the back of the properties and down. Are you going to consider something like that for this?
We're gonna have to. I know Upper Chichester has its own stormwater requirements. This is a 12.4 acre parcel. We will need an NPDS permit for this, so obviously the Delaware County Conservation District and DEP, we're gonna have to meet their guidelines as well. So, and not only that, but since the runoff is actually being directed to a PennDOT right of way, PennDOT's gonna have a lot to say about what actually gets to their right of way as well.
Okay, Alex, you have any questions?
The first one is, can you just repeat the building dimensions and area footprint?
Yeah, this sketch shows the building dimensions. So along its long axis, it's 500 feet, and along the short axis, it's 210 feet, for a total building area of 105,000 square feet.
How many square feet?
105,000.
The view from 322, is there any type of rendering from 322 side that?
Mr. Conrad, I think, submitted, which is generally an orthogonal, which I don't think is looking from 322. I think the view is actually being taken from really the Chichester Avenue side of the property.
Right.
Again, it's a concept. It kind of shows in more or less 3 dimensions generally what the proposal is.
Right, but the 322 side, I think, is probably the bigger view as far as, you know, it's from 322, this is like the top of the hill, and then you're going to have this warehouse building on top of the hill. So what, is there an actual minimum? I know you got a maximum of 50 per zoning as far as building height.
Mhm.
But I think it only said like less than 50. But
Correct.
Is there an anticipated building height?
Yeah, it's about 38 feet, 36 feet, about 36 feet. So that's the intent.
36 feet.
Sorry? Mr. Conrad.
The grading, I know it's a preliminary grading that typically is not even provided with a sketch plan. But you're showing, I guess, it looks like a 174 high point in the front center of the building.
Mhm.
Finished floor is 175.5.
Right.
But as you go towards the main entrance, I guess it looks like you're going to drop off to 166.
Correct.
So is this building going to have just one main entrance at the high point of the center, or are we going to end up with like stairs galore with a lot of different door entrances if you're going to have almost 9 or 10 feet of changing grade there?
So we don't know exactly all the answers to those questions just because we're so early in on the process. This sketch conceptually identifies a main entrance, which would be on the right side of the building as you're looking at the sketch. It does show a fairly significant staircase, and it also shows a series of ramps. Again, they're not graded out. We haven't done ADA compliance checks and whatnot, but the intent is to convey to the planning commission that right now, this would be the main entrance. Whether or not, I mean, we're not far enough along in the, you know, what's going to happen here, what the building's going to look like, what's actually going to be to understand where the pedestrian ingress and egress points are going to be, where the doorways may need to be, et cetera, et cetera. So we're pretty early on. We just thought it was pretty important to come to you folks and say, okay, this is what we're thinking about. Mr. Conrad, you know, has been working with some brokers to figure out, you know, what is, you know, the best use for this piece of property. And so so we're pretty early on. So a lot of your questions I might not actually have the answer to tonight. Should this move into land development, then we would do our best to articulate those on the plans and be prepared to, you know, have that conversation with you folks and ultimately the board as well in the approval process.
So I
But
guess
the proposal is a warehouse with offices.
Well, it's a warehouse trucking facility. Again, there would need to be some offices within that facility, just because there's gonna be some people who are gonna be working on some of the logistics ends of what's happening here. We don't know who the end user's gonna be. Really, what actually happens from the interior part of the building is gonna be at the discretion of the end user. And since we don't know who that is, we don't really have a lot of information in that regard.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, are you talking, are we looking at a warehouse building with 50 doors for tractor trailers.
Yeah, I think along the rear of the building, yeah, you're gonna see a significant number of bays that are gonna be along the back of the building, yes.
So here's my concern, is Chelsea Parkway is, we're closing off another access to 322, and it's gonna put a burden on Chelsea Parkway already. And now we're talking about tractor trailers on Chelsea Parkway as well.
Well, I think.
I don't know that we can withstand that much pressure on
Right.
that road.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I think I was trying to lead the first question as far as the entrances, because I think between the fact that it looks like they have one side main entrance, all of the parking on the front side, and then all those truck bays, I think it's really a distribution facility, not a warehouse building,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's,
I would say right now,
So you're proposing a distribution facility.
yes, that's the most.
So there's gonna be some heavy truck traffic.
That was my main concern too.
So without a private entrance to 322, it's going to be really hard for us.
understood. Yep, understood. I mean, the property is where it is. We have what we have to work with from an access and circulation standpoint in the surrounding roads. Clearly, a traffic study is going to be required till we get the land development. And I imagine that traffic study would be pretty heavily scrutinized by your consultants as well. And I imagine there would be a lot of dialogue about what the best way to mitigate those impacts would be. But your concern is not unfounded for sure.
Did you double check the zoning for a distribution facility versus a warehouse as far as the?
Well, what I did is we
By right
consulted
uses?
the IC Industrial Commercial Zoning District, and warehouse trucking and distribution facility is actually one of the uses
Did
articulated
they
in
have
there
the
by right.
distribution
Yes.
facility as well? Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So I think if we're just basically looking at just consideration with how the site's oriented, the back, just the back trucking loading dock bay looks like you might need to just make some adjustments to make sure that there's more access for the rear loading areas. I guess it almost looks like there's going to be some bays that look like you might not really have accessibility to.
No doubt. And again, since we don't know the exact number of bays, we don't know where they're going to go, the configuration of what's back here could easily change depending on what the end user needs. And obviously, we're going to be, if we get the land development, we would do truck template turning analysis to make sure that the circulation pattern is suitable. There's no congestion, there's no issues with conflicts from traffic and whatnot. So that's what we would do.
Right. And
So are
then,
you waiting till you have the end user and good land development, to know about the dates and all that? I was gonna say, that's what I was hearing.
Yeah, but again, that's still, I think we still need to figure out more information about what else we're gonna show, because that could have an impact, depending on, as Mr. Conrad goes forward with his, investigations, he can get more information, and it's gonna allow us to maybe make some adjustments in the rear here, so.
Okay. The adjustments will be now, not for the end user. Okay.
is the right of way that you're showing for 322, is that showing what it's going to be with the ultimate 322 project, or is that just showing the existing?
We did not do a survey of this, we actually took this survey information from a plan that was done by J.D. Hootman and Sons, so I don't know the answer to your question. Steve, do you know that?
I'm not sure what plan you have. We do have the final plan. It was-
I mean, I have that plan, but I wasn't sure.
So for some reason, the new PennDOT right-of-way line isn't shown there, but we took that into account.
Plan shows 120 foot total right of way for PennDOT, whether or not that includes it, I don't know, but clearly, if there's something that's different, then we'll have to make modifications, but I don't think it's gonna have any impact on the building setback line relative to where the building is out in the plan.
No, I was just looking at the lower parking lot area, rating down there.
Mhm.
So
When we drew that plan preliminary, we had the PennDOT plan, where the basins are going. They have the final plan. They're going to be taking about 2 acres of the property.
okay, so you feel confident that that's
Yes.
going to be all still outside of it?
In fact, the one parking lot, if you see, it's cut short a little.
How about this one here, Steve?
Right.
Okay.
So the line actually is just like this. So this couldn't come all the way across. Took all that.
Okay.
I have a question. Are these trucks going to go around the rear of the building where the residences are?
I think from a circulation standpoint, the trucks are gonna take the path of least resistance. The way I see it, based on this pattern, if it doesn't change, the trucks would come in, they would take a left, and they would move around in this direction. It's gonna be more awkward for them to move through a series where passenger cars are parked, so they're gonna wanna get in short and get out. This actually, you know, with logistics, seconds matter, so they're gonna try to take the shortest route possible.
So the reason I'm asking is because if they're going to have trucks be running back here, the residents are going to complain about the noise. And something would have to be done about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly buffering.
That section though is 15 feet. I assume that retaining wall act as some sort of sound barrier.
That's bedroom height, 15 feet off the ground
Well,
for the residents.
15 feet below the ground.
Right, so this grading, so right now, this grading shows the grade along this property line in this location is about 194. Grading here on this driveway here is about 174. So the driveway itself is about 20 feet lower than the property line. The difference in elevation, you know, joined up with some buffering is probably the best you can do to mitigate some of those sounds, because the sound that travels up is really going to be reflected off. I would think if it was at grade or a little bit higher, there'd actually be more possibility for noise. But I'm not going to say that the residents aren't going to complain. It would be silly for me to say that.
They probably will.
Visually, I guess also the building from the residential side, I guess to stay on that one topic. Your top of building is going to be at elevation 211 roughly, and the ground where all the residences are going to be at 190. So I guess the building, even from the residential side, may be difficult to buffer, even though you're cutting, the building height is still going above that cut height.
Depending on the buffering that would go along this property line, I mean, mature height may be 15, 20 feet or so, but early on, upon early initial construction and when all the buffering would be put in, it would be visible to a certain extent.
So the residential side will only be 20 feet above the ground. Actually,
Have you talked to PennDOT at all?
Yeah.
And so PennDOT's aware that you're talking about trucking coming through, and that the main access to this will be Chelsea Avenue. It's not going to be Chichester Avenue. I can't see the trucks running up Chelsea Parkway. Correct. Which is going to be the main entrance to come into this entire community from 322.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what Jim was talking about earlier. So the traffic flow here, and I know that's not your major concern, but it's one of my concerns as to living in this community, is going to be ridiculous if there's 10 trucks coming in, and I don't know what the frequency is going to be. There could be 1 an hour, there could be 10 an hour. I have no idea what you're talking about as far as who's going to be coming in, who's going to be going out, what time of day they're going to be coming in and coming out. But the main flow of traffic into this community is going to be down Chelsea Parkway, or they won't be able to get here. So right there at that one particular spot is the entrance to and the egress from your building, which means trucks are going to be pulling out there, going down, going back to to 322, up Chelsea Parkway, and PennDOT hasn't said anything to this.
I think.
Well, they haven't submitted the.
No, I understand that.
But you're saying, you're saying you're possibly seeing a PennDOT, or at least we will be, when they do a traffic study, we'll be looking at them to see if there's any improvements needed at Chelsea with 322.
Well, you know, I mean, you got a bridge you got a bridge going over 322, which I don't know if that comes down, goes up, if that's going to be modified or whatnot, but trucks get stuck under that right now. They have to go up and down Chichester Avenue. That's one problem. Plus, if the trucks aren't using Chelsea, they're going to go right down through your beautiful streetscape that you're building all the way down to 95 to get out of here. They're certainly not going to go to Concord Road to get out of here. So, I mean, it just seems to me that it's not in the best interest of a homeowner to have all these trucks going around. And I'm saying all these trucks, I don't know if we're talking 2 or 50 or 100, I don't know.
I think the position, that the trucks will come in Chelsea Parkway, cross Chi Avenue, go into the center, leave the center, cross Chi Avenue, they get on Chelsea Parkway.
Right.
So there's no residential.
Except I'm sitting at 322 and Chelsea Avenue trying to get to my house, which is right across the street. And I have to wait for 15 trucks to get into your place before I can make a left-hand turn on Chichester.
I mean, obviously, there'll be a traffic study, but I think.
Yeah, okay.
PennDOT's directing, that's how they're changing this whole thing, they're directing all the traffic.
Well, you came in, and we do appreciate developers coming in and giving us sketch plans and giving us an opportunity to give them feedback. My feedback is it's not what we envisioned for that property. We are going to have a community full of people who are already upset with the traffic. We had this room at overflow capacity over a Wawa. Okay. So I'm not saying it mean-spirited, I'm saying it honestly, that we're going to have a community that is in opposition to this plan.
Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. And again, let me get my glasses down here. The phone number is 571-848-4021. And the PIN number is 776-731-874. So we will wait a minute or two to see if we get any public comments. And then we will, if nobody else has any comments, then we'll take a vote on it.
There's no vote.
There's no vote?
Vote on the sketch plan.
Okay, so we don't even do a recommendation on it, we just look at it?
No. Give them the recommendation, and then the board of commissioners, they go to the board of commissioners, and Mike will be there.
Well, my comments, I agree with Charles and Mr. Renner. We're already going to have a problem because of the Wawa, and it's not even here yet, and the traffic backs up all the way into Linwood and all the way out past the CVS store.
What I'll do is I'll do the minutes, and
Okay, and I would like to read the traffic plan when it's done, traffic study, just like I did for the Wawa.
Yeah, when they come in with plans.
well, they don't do that until they go and submit.
So they
preliminary
submit the
for
plans
their
themselves.
final.
And I think they're going to have a lot of opposition also.
I think we're gonna be.
Please look at other opportunities, other ideas.
I think we're gonna be scrutinizing a traffic study review. We're probably gonna be definitely requiring a sound study as far as making sure that the noise of the trucks idling, and depending on what the hours of operation, if you're gonna have multiple shifts, weekend shifts, I mean, it's, there's gonna be a lot of questions and concerns that I guess we'll need to raise.
I understand why you have to change the way you were thinking because of the current climate. But like Mr. Renner asked, could you please consider other options other than a warehouse, because you're going to get opposition to it.
That's why we do the sketch plan, do your comments to get early on.
Thank you. We do
Thank you
appreciate it.
for coming in.
Thank you for coming in. We'll see you again, hopefully.
I know it's
And then they already have the problem in Aston where they're going to be complaining about from Upper Chichester, the noise from that facility they want to put in there. So you already know you're going to have it here. It's a kind of like a future vision thing. Okay, so we're done with the public comments and everything. Let's see.
We're done with the public.
Pardon? We're the only public left. Mr. Mike, the Transfer Act?
Right, this is something that we got in the all municipalities that are serviced through Delcora. This is seeking comment on their 537 plan revisions related to the sewer treatment. There's nothing that we really have to do now. Perhaps in August or September, we may have additional comment, but there's nothing to do. It was really just passed out for informational purposes.
Okay. I didn't read it. Did anybody else read it?
No, you just got it.
You just got it, but it just came.
Oh,
I
okay.
sent it to-
Are we gonna get it?
I
Yep.
sent it to everybody by email too.
Yep.
So if you want the entire report, which is 70, I know you do. I gave you 27 pages of the 72 report, all the rest are attachments, but if you want them, I will put them in.
Yes, please.
And if you don't feel like reading it, we're going to be doing a preparation of a memorandum, basically summarizing any revisions that we can see between the current 537 and the proposed, and then give you some guidance on what we see with those changes. I mean, we have enough municipality clients that we're going to be putting something together for everybody in one shot, so
Okay.
you'll have some
Good.
information
I
to
still
look
would
at.
like to read something on the matter.
I'll send you both, I'll send you the whole report, and then I'll give everybody the county report.
Okay, is there anything else on
Nothing
that
else?
one?
Nope.
Okay. Heart and Soul, Mr. Charles.
Well, we don't have a lot of additional items to report, other than we're having what we call chai chats. They're continuing. We had a summit back in February where we developed a bunch of value statements. Jim, I think you attended the summit. You were, sell your picture at one of the tables there. And basically, we have one chai chat left to go, and it should be a pretty saucy issue, education. And we'll see how that goes. That'll be this coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And it's on the Heart and Soul website, and we've also sent out, have a mailing list, we send it out to the community and whatnot. Attendance at these chai chats has gone anywhere from the members of our committee to 20 people so far. I think it's very valuable because you're getting unsolicited information, where people are just honestly expressing their feelings about whatever the particular topic was. Last night we discussed safety, and we had former police chief, and what's Bill's current? He's the head of the EMS, Bill Robinson, attended, and very valuable comments he had to say about what was going on within the community as far as 911 and a few other issues that came up during the course of the discussion. We also discussed that particular value statement talks about how people enjoy living in Upper Chichester because it is a community where people feel safe and that they feel like their services that we have here, the fire, EMS, police, the maintenance with the township with respect to taking care of the streets and all this other stuff is very well received. So it's a very positive statement. But we've also had survey that has been circulating now for 3 months, about 3 months. How many surveys do we have back so far now, Barb?
185.
185. We were hoping to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 300. COVID has really put the kibosh on a lot of our opportunities to get out into the public. Our distribution was going to be through restaurants. People would come in. We'd have surveys sitting there for them to take out. Ballparks, people coming to watch their kids play ball, we would have surveys there for them to take along within, you get 5%, 10% return. You would still get people to provide some information. So it's been very difficult. Although we do continue to plug the survey in our monthly newsletter, and we also have mentioned it in the township newsletter, or we're going to be mentioning it in the township. So that's where we are right now. We have one chai chat left to go, and then we're going to be moving into looking at what the survey is actually telling us. So in other words, In the summit, we created these value statements. Now we've asked people to comment on those value statements. Is this really what Upper Chichester looks like, sounds like, feels like? Does this really represent what we think of our community? And the surveys will help us get further down into the grass with respect to dealing with those issues. So we'll be studying and reviewing those over the next month or so. And I don't have that part.
Oh.
You were going to give me that. But
Yeah,
I don't have that.
everybody has one of these in your packet. It's basically what happens with the surveys and 5 ways that Hartselle transforms towns. And we were highlighted in one of the 5.
Everybody at the upper table got one.
Yeah. I was the extra seat, I guess. But the Orton Foundation and keep forgetting, but you're always throwing out these acronyms and I can never follow them.
Pennsylvania United
PHS or whatever it is.
Pennsylvania United Council, PHC,
PHC,
and
okay.
PCD.
I worked for IRS for 42 years and it took me 42 years to understand the acronyms over there. So I got a couple of years to catch up on Barb's acronyms. In any event, they've attended most of our chats. They've provided some valuable information for us as we're listening to these people on the calls with respect to what certain terms mean. In other words, when you if you define a word, what does that mean? There's a common usage of the word, but there may be a different understanding of that word depending on maybe your demographics, how old you are, where you're from, etc. And so we've tried to look at that as well as far as communicating with the public. Soon be looking at what possible actions might we recommend to either accomplish what these value statements speak to, or to support these value statements, to find out what we're doing within the community along the lines of each one of the value statements. And we'll be making recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, and we're looking for partners within the community that may want to work on certain issues that may come up. I don't want to speculate on what those issues might be, but for each one of these things, we're trying to say, well, what should we know if we're going to talk about safety? Who should we talk to? Well, obviously, these calls are helping us. Well, let's talk to the EMS people. Let's talk to the fire people. Let's talk to these people. They should be involved in anything where we're trying to understand and or facilitate or improve how that functions within the community. So we're looking for partners to work with as well. Anything else, Barb?
Okay, and
Survey, yeah.
that's done. Okay, and Barbara has a statement for the recreation.
Ryan Warren, as per the CNR grant initial progress report requirements, Ryan will actually attend a future planning commission meeting to introduce the scope of work, and the chosen professional planner will be presenting the final draft of the CNR master parks plan to us, and then it will go to actually the board of commissioners, just like the Linwood Heights plan and 322 plan. You'll need some volunteers for the master parks plan. And does anybody want to join from the planning commission like we did with Hartselle, we did with the Normal?
Okay, does anybody have any other business to bring up before we adjourn?
Linwood Heights plan is going before the board in September.
Okay. I guess we're done. Motion to adjourn? Second?
Second?
Wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Good job. Good job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.